Hello everyone, this is Professor Robert Solis. Welcome to this video lesson. During this video lesson, I want to show you how to create a grade sheet that looks just like this, where we'll have various students and they'll have quiz scores. We'll want to be able to display the total, their percentage, and then finally their letter grade based on that percentage. Now, I'm going to show you how to use the fill handle. We're going to show you how to use the if statement. And I'm also going to show you how to use the concatenation operator and how you'll be hiding or unhiding columns. Alright, well the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to type student in A1, and then I'll say quiz 1 score, quiz 2, and then I'll select these two cells, B1 and C1, and then I'm going to use the fill handle to drag across so that we have a total of 5 quizzes. Alright, so let me go ahead and type some student names, such as Robert, Kristen, Joshua, Jackson, and Rosie. And then I'm going to give the scores for Robert, which I'll say is 95, 85 for Kristen, 75 for Joshua, 65 for Jackson, and then 55 for Rosie. I want to take those same scores and apply them to all the 5 quizzes. So I'll select from B2 all the way to B6. I'll take the fill handle and I'll drag that across. So now that all the students have their respective scores for all 5 quizzes. Okay. The next thing I want to do is I want to type total in G1, percent, and then grade. So to obtain the total for Robert, there's a couple of ways that I could do that. Let me show you all of them. One thing that I could do is I could press equals and then type in Robert's quiz 1 score, which would be B2. So I'll type in B2. Then I'll hit the plus key, and then I want to add Robert's quiz 2 score, so that's C2. So I'll type C2. Plus, and then D2 plus E2 plus F2. Alright, so if I add all of these together, notice that I started off with the equal symbol because that's what Microsoft Excel needs if I'm about to enter an equation. So I press enter, and now 95 plus 95 plus 95 plus 95 plus 95 equals 475. So this cell does not contain 475. The formula bar over here shows that really the contents of G2 is this equation. But the way that that's being manifested is the addition of all those numbers in these cells, and that comes out to 475. So that's one way of adding up a bunch of numbers. Let me press delete on the keyboard to clear the contents of G2. And now what I want to do is to add all of these up by using an equation from this auto sum button. So this guy over here, the sum button or auto sum, if I were to click this drop down, I see all of the different functions that are available. And if I wanted to see a whole bunch of additional functions, I could click more functions. But in this case, I just want the sum. If I click sum, or if I just simply click this guy over here, they both will give me the sum. So first I'll click this. Notice what happens. A question is being asked of me. And the question is, do you want to add all the cells from B2, see there's the B2 there, all the way up to F2, as you can see the F2 over here. And the colon in the middle means all of the cells in between. So, do I want to obtain the sum of all the cells from B2 to F2? I do, so I'll press enter. There we go. Now that I have the score, the total score for Robert, I can take the fill handle, this little guy over here in the lower right hand corner, I can drag it down so that that equation applies to the rest of the students. So notice how Microsoft Excel figures out that the equation over here really is adding everything to the left. Well, if I were to add everything to the left over here, that'd be the addition of 5 85s or the addition of 5 55s. And those answers would be placed, as you can see, in the appropriate cell because I use that fill handle to drag it down. Okay, now let's determine the solution for percent for Robert. Well, let's assume that each quiz is worth 100 points. For a total of 5 quizzes, that means that we would have 500 points. To obtain the percent, we'll take the student's score, which in this case for Robert it's 475. We'll divide that by 500 and we'll place the answer here. So once again, I want to enter an equation, so I start off with the equals symbol. So I press equals. We'll say this is the result of Robert's total, which is over here, so I'll click G2, or I could type G2, divided by, so that's the /, and then I'll type 500. Now I'm going to press enter. By the way, notice that whatever I type here also appears in the formula bar. Now that I have finished entering my equation, I press enter, and it comes up to 0.95. Well, obviously that's not a percent. What happens is this is the decimal form of 475 divided by 500. If I want to display this as a percent, I can use this button over here called the percent style. So when I click the percent style, it takes that 0.95 and it turns it into a percent representation. What if I wanted a number after the decimal point? Or maybe I don't want a number after the decimal point. Well, that means I have to understand how to use these two buttons. So this one's called increase decimal, this one's called decrease decimal. Watch what happens when I click the increase decimal button. Notice that a 0 appears after the decimal point. I'm going to click it again, and now another 0 appears after the decimal point. So I have two zeros. Maybe I just want one number after the decimal point, so I'm going to click the decrease decimal button, and now I'm only displaying one number after the decimal point. Okay, let's go ahead and apply this to the rest of the students. So I'll just simply take this fill handle, drag it down. There we go. So we see that Robert's got a 95, Rosie's got a 55, and everyone else in between has their respective percentages. Okay, now it's time to solve for the grade. Now this one's going to be a little bit more tricky because what I want to do is I want to display A, B, C, D, or F. Now you know what the criteria is. Anything that's greater than or equal to 90, that's an A. So in this case, Robert should have an A. And Kristen should have a B because she's at 85%. Joshua a C, Jackson a D, and then Rosie an F. So how do I display one of 5 different possibilities, A, B, C, D, or F? Well, here's one approach. This is not the approach. This is simply one approach. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create 5 grade columns, A, B, C, D, and F. Okay, well now that I have these 5 grade columns, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the question, is the percentage greater than or equal to 90, for example, in the A category? If the percentage is greater than or equal to 90, then I'll put an A here. Otherwise, I'll leave it blank. Over here, is the percentage greater than or equal to 80, and is it less than 90? If it is, put a B here. Otherwise, leave it blank. For this cell, is the percentage greater than or equal to 70%? If it is, put a C here. Otherwise, leave it blank. And so forth and so on for these two, right? Greater than or equal to 60, less than 70, D, less than 60, you get an F. When I display all of the appropriate letters or blanks, then I'm going to concatenate the answers and put them here. Now that word concatenate is a 50-cent word that just simply means to put together. So I'll tell you what, let me give you a sample. Let's say that after I put the equation over here that I put an A here, and these are supposed to be blank because Robert got a 95%. Watch this. Over here, I'm going to press the equal symbol. I'm going to click this cell, and I want to enter the concatenation operator. Now this guy right here, formerly called the ampersand, in Microsoft Excel we call this the concatenation operator. The concatenation operator just simply means put together 2 things, or maybe 3 things, or 4 things. Just put them together. Well, I want to put this together with this. I want to concatenate C2, D2, M2, I'm sorry, and also N2. So I press enter. So notice what happens over here for cell I2. This is the concatenation, or maybe a slang way would be of saying this is putting together all of the contents of these cells, namely these cells right here. Well, if I put the contents together, let's see, blank put together with blank, put together with blank, put together with blank, put together with the letter A, displays the letter A. What if the student earned a B? Okay, so let me go ahead and put a B here. Now you can see what happens. The concatenation of all these means that the B appears. What if the student earned a C? Well, that means that the letter C would appear here. And again, notice the concatenation of all these cells yields a C, so forth and so on. So that's how we're going to do it. We're going to have to figure out if the person got an A, then flip a switch on and put an A here. Otherwise, leave it blank. Did the person get a C? Well, if so, flip the switch on, display a C. Otherwise, leave it blank. So let's start off with A and F because those are the 2 easiest ones. Here's what I want you to do. We are going to introduce the usage of the if statement. So place your, or select I should say, J2, and then you're going to click the insert function button. Now when we click the insert function button, the first thing that it does is it takes you to the most recently used category. Now, It may be that you find the if statement here, but if you do not, then you simply click the category button, and then we're going to select logical. When you select logical, at that point you'll see the if function. So we're going to click OK, and the if function basically is this. I'm going to provide some sort of a logical test, such as, is the percent greater than or equal to 90? If that's true, then do something over here for the true part, otherwise do something over here for the false part. You can think of this as a 2-button radio in your car, the 2-button car stereo. So either one channel is selected or the other channel is selected, but both of them can't be selected simultaneously. So either one or the other has to be selected. That's exactly what this is. This is a 2-button car stereo that only has 2 buttons. One of them is going to be on, the other one's going to be off. Okay, so let's do this. For the logical test, we have to ask a question. Let me move this up here and really isolate so that we can take a look at Robert's percentage. Now in this case, what we want to do is we want to ask, is Robert's percentage, which is in H2, so I'm going to select this cell, or I could type it. Is H2 greater than or equal to? Now, if I just wanted to say greater than, then it would just be this. Sorry about that. There we go. That's greater than. This is less than. This is greater than or equal to. This is less than or equal to. This means not equal to. And obviously that means equal to. What we want is this thing greater than or equal to 90%? And the way that I'm going to represent the 90% is in the form of a decimal. So 0.9. That's really the same thing as 90%. It's just being represented as a decimal. If that is true, that Robert's percentage is greater than or equal to 90%, over here I'm going to put capital letter A. I could also put quote, A close quote, but Excel will do that for me. Watch this. If I put capital A and hit tab, notice how it puts the quotation marks around the letter for me. Okay, so if that's true, that Robert's percent is greater than or equal to 90%, then you've earned an A. Otherwise, I'm going to put quote, quote. Now notice that this is not quote, space, quote. It's just simply 2 quotation marks right next to each other. In other words, it's blank. It's null. It's nothing. If Robert's percentage is greater than 90%, greater than or equal to 90%, then put an A in this cell. Otherwise, leave this cell blank. So let's see what happens. Let me click OK. And notice that an A appears in the cell because Robert earned a 95%. What if for quiz 5 Robert got a 0? Let me press enter. Let's see what happens. Well, that means his overall percentage is 76, and now notice what happens. The A does not appear here. Why? Because the percentage has to be greater than or equal to 90%. All right, so let's see. Let me mess around with these numbers. Let's say that Robert got a 55. Let me press enter. That's an 87. That's still not an A. Let's see. How about a 60? That's 88. We're getting closer. How about a 70? That's a 90, and now all of a sudden notice what happens. Robert gets an A, and so that's why there's the A over here in J2. Okay, so we have figured out what the equation should look like, as you can see over here, for column A. Let's do the same thing for column F for Robert. There's a potential that Robert could get an F, so we need to figure what that is. And the potential is this. If the percent is less than 60%, then let's give Robert an F. Otherwise, let's just simply put a blank here, or just leave it blank. So I'll go ahead and select N2, and then we're going to click this function button. Okay, so we click the insert function button, and it already takes me to the logical category. That's where I was last time, and sure enough, I need the if function, so I'll click that, and then I'll click OK. All right, so what is the logical test? Well, the logical test is if Robert's percent, well, Robert's percent, that's H2. So if H2 is less than 0.6, notice that I'm putting the decimal form of the answer. If Robert's percent is less than 60%, then he's going to get an F. So I'll put the capital F here. Notice that when I select the next cell, that it automatically puts the quotation marks for me.